In the life for an individual who uses AAC to communicate.
So for low tech, I thought my communication was very limited because of the amount of boxes that I have in my board. Because you can only talk as much as the boxes provide for you. And for someone who likes to talk in general, that was very limiting for me. Like, there's no room for personality, there's no room for a lot of anything else besides what you were asking for and maybe like please and thank you. And that's it. And then for mid-tech, I was very happy to have, I thought it was a lot easier because I had the Go 9 Talk Plus kind of do the communication for me. It was just me pressing the buttons and then it would talk. Like, I wouldn't have to point and there wasn't this like awkward communication barrier that I had with the person I was trying to communicate with. And there was also no room for personality. So like I wasn't able to show that I have a personality. I was kind of like a robot.
What successes did you and your partner experience?
So one of the successes that I experienced with my low tech was that the server so I was having communication issues with her about ordering, and she gave me a piece of paper to write what I wanted to order so I could communicate better with her. And I thought that was a success because what we were doing before wasn't working for her, and she was having a hard time communicating with me. So instead of getting frustrated at me, she found a combination for me of writing it down, and I was able to then communicate with her better in a way that would both work for us. And I still got my food. It worked out fine. And then for mid-tech, I didn't really have any successes, but I'll discuss that further.
All right. What challenges did you and your partner face?
So again, as I mentioned with the low tech, I had communication issues because I went at a different time than we had anticipated. I was gonna have dinner and instead we had lunch, and they changed the menu from when you have lunch to dinner. And so I had to come up with things kind of on the fly. Some of my pictures still worked for a lot of the stuff that I wanted to order, but it was really challenging, again, kind of to come up with things on the fly. And then, again, another big challenge for me was the teller at the bank, at TD Bank that I was using. He didn't make any eye contact with me unless he had to, so I felt like, again, like a robot that I didn't have. It was weird. He would talk to me, make eye contact, and then he'd like rumble around at his desk and not make eye contact with me. I'm not sure why that was. And then previously I had gone to the bank before. I had the same teller and he talked to me the entire time I was there. So it was just not nice of him to do that. Specifically because I was using an AT device, I think, too.
What did you notice about the reception to the devices?
So they honestly didn't seem to notice the devices. The only thing that was really frustrating for me is the teller at the TD Bank, he didn't make any eye contact with me. The lady seemed fine with the board, maybe a little confused on why I was using it, but other than that, she seemed fine with it.
Alright. And then, what ethical considerations must teachers realize when suggesting an AAC option, and how can you address those?
So they need to consider what would be the best type of AT for the student because they're depending on it for their communication. So like, I wouldn't set up a student to have the small board. I would set him up to use maybe the Go Talk 9 board, or an iPad, because again, they're depending on this to communicate and they would need more availability to talk, and they need that freedom to express themselves more, because again, it's very, very limiting when you only have 10 or so boxes to communicate. I would address it by really considering like who my student is and thinking about like or how old they are too. So for example, I would probably provide a kindergartner with a low tech board because they have low communication anyway. And then as they get older, maybe even like high school, adult age, I might provide them with a high tech board, so like an iPad or even mid tech, depending on what their level of communication is like. So I might give them a board like this, or I might give them an iPad when their communication increases, just like how my communication would increase as I get older as well. And then another thing that I learned from AT is that AT can be very limiting and can be frustrating to use. As I've just said, that using those 10 boxes for your whole lifespan of communication, I can't imagine that being easy at all. And then even with mid-tech, like, you only have only a certain amount of communication too. Like there's more, but it's still limiting you. And again, there's not a lot of room for personality. It's all over the place.